Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Rock Bottom Airsoft. It's good to see you again. As always, if it's your first time here, then it's good to see you. We're going to do a bit of a different video today. Bit of a discussion on a topic that always comes up with my friends and other players on site when I'm playing Airsoft. And also I thought it'd be fun to have a look at one of the first replicas that I ever purchased, which I've had the longest. Which has had a fair bit of work done to it. So before I get into that, as always, if you are enjoying my series of videos, then please do subscribe, and then you'll be kept up to date every time I release a new video. Normally try to get gameplay videos up midweek, and then at a weekend I'll always look at discussing some sort of aspect of Airsoft, whether that be doing a bit of tech, or an unboxing, or a review, something along those lines. I'll always do something different based around our favourite hobby. If you like this video, then drop a like on it, and as always I do try to get back to any comments you leave me, so if you have any questions for me, then put that in the comments below. I'll always get back to you. It might not be straight away, but I will get back to you. And if you want more content from me as well as the videos that I upload here, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook as Rock Bottom Airsoft, and there's loads of photos and discussions and things on there as well, okay? So let's get straight into it with that out of the way. So what we're going to look at today, well, what I thought we'd look at today is how far is too far when you're looking at modifying or upgrading one of your replicas. As a new player, when I first started in Airsoft, there was so many upgrades and so many options out there for things you can do for your rifle, with so many promises of what those things will do to your rifle. It was a bit mind-numbing really on how much stuff is available, and there's different brands, different parts, different things, as well as obviously paying another individual to do all these things for you, which are very commonly known as a tech. Now, before we go any further, I would not classify myself as a tech. I do like to work on my own replicas. I do work occasionally on some of the site replicas where I play, and I also work on friends' replicas and things like that, but it's not something I do for money. I do like tinkering with them. Now that brings me on to the first part of when we say how far is too far with upgrades. Now, let's say for example you go out and you get your first replica. It really does depend on how much you've got to spend. Now, here on Rock Bottom Airsoft, we like to do things affordably. So my very first replica that I bought when I first got into the sport, believe it or not, was this one. This doesn't look anything like it did when I first purchased the replica. This is a CYMA CM.513. That's what it started off as. Now that is a very affordable rifle. You can pick one of those up for around about 80 British pounds. It's an absolutely fine rifle to play with. When it was absolutely standard, I used it in quite a few games. It never let me down. It was absolutely fine. Things to be aware of with a replica of this kind of price point is you are limited on the sort of things that you get with it. For example, the receivers, the buffer tube, which is this section here, the stock, the handguard, which is this section, your upper rails, your charging handle, pretty much everything on it is plastic. It's not what I would call a high quality plastic either. It's not like a nice polymer that you would get on, say, something like a G&G combat machine or an ASG Sportline replica. It's a very creaky plastic, but it's certainly strong. I've fallen on this rifle, believe it or not, before it had any of these upgrades done to it, and it never broke. I've dropped it, I've bashed it about, and it always served me absolutely fine, and I've had it for quite a number of years now as well. Now, because of that, obviously it will put a lot of people off. You can make changes, but this is where you'll get into the point of how far is too far when upgrading your replica. Well, let's say you've got one of these, absolutely standard, but you don't want to do any of the work to it yourself. If you're planning on paying someone to do upgrades for you, it can get costly. The people that do the upgrades will normally be very professional, do a very good job. But you know, if you're going to upgrade a rifle and spend a lot of money having it upgraded and paying someone to do the upgrades for you to a standard, then, you know, me personally, I would think that you'd like to have a nice, maybe full metal upper and lower receiver, full metal handguard, full metal buffer, you know, everything to look as realistic as possible and feel as realistic as possible before spending a lot of money on internal upgrades. So, you know, there is that to bear in mind, that it can get quite expensive if you're going to be paying someone to do upgrades. If, on the other hand, you're looking at doing upgrades yourself and you want to learn to work on your own rifles, or tech on your own rifles as they call it, then, you know, then the sky's your limit. You can go as far as you want. Now, this particular replica I use for practice. If there's a new component, a new part, or a new technique I'm going to try out, I try it out on this one because it was my first ever replica, which is the reason it's changed so much. And to be fair, I've grown to love it. I use this all the time. I used it in my most recent gameplay video. It has broken down on me a few times when I first started working on it because, you know, again, I was learning how to do techniques such as shimming and, you know, the correct gears and nozzle length and all that kind of thing. And there are all sorts of things that I'll show you how to do in later videos when we get more in depth into the tech. I will show you how to do that. But in the meantime, if you're just starting out, then yeah, you know, if you're going to pay someone to do upgrades, then to be honest, on a rifle this cheap, it may not be worth it. If you particularly like it, then, you know, it's your money. It depends how deep your pockets are. So let's have a look at my CM.513 here and see what's original on it. Well, the only original parts on this replica now are the upper, lower receiver, the pistol grip, the trigger. That's pretty... oh, I'm sorry, the outer barrel. The outer barrel is still original, because the outer barrel on these CM.513s is full metal, which is great. The gearbox and the drivetrain in the gearbox, the gears, etc., they are also full metal, so it's a fairly decent gearbox. There are no problems with it at all, and the shooting performance with it is fine out the box. What did I change? Well, when I first got the replica, if you're looking at starting out and doing upgrades and you're wondering whether it's worth doing, then just have a play around. The first thing I did was buy this sight, because it was externals that I was looking at. I got that sight very affordable. That was on eBay, not very much at all, about 15 British pounds, and it works absolutely fine. It's just a basic red dot sight. It can have a green dot as well, you can do either or, and I've never had any issues with it. It's not let me down. It's been used in all weathers, absolutely fine. What was the next thing that I changed? Well, I never liked the fact that it had a plastic buffer tube. I always thought if anything's going to break, that seemed like a point of failure. So I changed the buffer tube out for an aluminium buffer tube. Again, this was another purchase on eBay. Very affordable. I think it was around about £17 for a generic alloy buffer tube, which also came with the metal castle nut on there as well. And that works absolutely fine. Another point of failure I found was that the sling attachment point here at the back, the multi-sling attachment point, that was plastic on the standard rifle. And again, as I use a sling pretty much in every game, I did think that was going to be a point of failure as well. So I changed that out for a metal sling mount. Again, I think that was around about £5 online. Not very expensive at all. And then this front grip on the front handguard there, again, I got that as a generic piece. I think that was around about £8 just to change the look of the rifle. This I wouldn't really count as an upgrade. I put that on to protect my sight, but again, very cheap, around about £6 or £7. And that was it for external upgrades. I've used it for a long time like that. I then discovered as well that the magazine catch here is plastic on the standard replica, which again I thought would be another point of failure. Putting your magazines in and out, it was going to wear out eventually. So I changed it. I changed it for this all metal magazine catch. This is an extended catch, and it's also ambidextrous, and that was a CYMA part. I think I paid around about £10 for that, and again a very easy swap to change that out. I can do videos on that if you want to see videos on how to change all these external parts. That's not a problem at all. Very simple jobs, very good for learning and getting used to taking your replica apart and get over those initial nerves of taking one apart. And again, you know, if this is your first rifle, it's only an £80 rifle, so you're not as worried if you go wrong on this replica. But as with any upgrades, I'd always recommend that before you start upgrading a rifle, make sure you have another replica. Make sure you have a backup, so that if you do take this apart and then it doesn't go to plan, you can still go to your game days with your other replica. So it's always worth having another one. Another way of practicing upgrades is going to boneyard sales and buying replicas that are already broken. And then you can practice at getting the gearbox working or fixing any faults that may be on it. So moving on, after I'd done all of those external upgrades, it soon got to me that I wanted to improve the performance of the rifle. Now, the most simple upgrades you can do to especially an AR pattern replica is the barrel group. You can change your hop up rubber and nub. That's a simple job. I'm going to show you how to do that in a later video. You can put a tight bore barrel in, or you can put a precision barrel in, whatever you prefer. This current replica has a Prometheus barrel. It has a Pro Win hop up chamber fitted with a Promi purple rubber and the standard nub. Now, I know there's a lot of people don't like the Pro Win hop ups. I've heard of issues. I've encountered some rifles that people have given me to fix that have had them fitted, and normally the issues have come down to how the Pro Win's been fitted. However, you know, I know they're not the most popular these days. This one, I have never had any problems with this Pro Win. This rifle will feed from any magazine I put in it, and I've had good results for range and consistency with it as well. So that's where you start looking at a bit more money. Barrels get a little bit more expensive, inner barrels. Hop chambers, well, they can get very expensive, especially if you're looking at the max type units. Hop rubbers, anything up to about £10 really, and nubs. But it's a very simple job to change that, and you can get dramatic differences in the performance of your replica just by changing the hop rubber and the barrel. You don't necessarily have to change the hop chamber, but I like the rotary hop chamber, which is why I changed out the hop chamber, because the Pro Win's rotary. So that was my first look at upgrades to performance. That might be a route you want to go down. Now, that isn't too far in my opinion. Any replica can be improved with a hop rubber change, or you know, a combination of barrel hop rubber and hop chamber. So then after I'd done that and I was impressed with the performance improvements I got there, that was when I started getting into the gearbox side of things. Believe me when I say that on this replica now, the only standard item in this gearbox is the gearbox shell itself. Everything else has been changed. There is a MOSFET, a Gate Murph 3.2 fitted to this replica. It's got an upgraded spring. I've done a modified tappet plate on it. It's running 12:1 SHS gears. It's got a high torque SHS motor fitted. It's been rewired. It's been soldered to Deans, as I do with all my replicas. The trigger group has been changed to a Lonex trigger. The actual trigger itself is the standard one, but the trigger trolley and contacts inside are now Lonex. I've changed the cylinder to a poison apple cylinder. I've changed the piston to an SHS steel right piston. I've changed the piston head to a POM type head. I've changed the cylinder head. Pretty much everything on it, the nozzle, you know, there is nothing left standard on it. The anti-reversal latch, everything in it has been changed, and I use that as a practice, as a test bed on how to best improve performance on a replica. And every time I change something on the replica, I try it out. The handguard I then continued with external upgrades after that. So the handguard is a Nuprol Boca handguard, which fit nicely. So that's now an aluminium handguard. And the stock on the buffer tube there is an axe style stock. This rifle can now run on 11.1 LiPos if I so desire. I've actually set it up to run on 7.4 LiPo batteries because I prefer to run 7.4 these days and try and get my rate of fire up through gearbox shimming and gear ratios. So this can pretty much be, as people call them, LiPo ready, which I don't like the sound of. Now I've done all of that work myself. I've never paid anybody to do it. Now I would say that the upgrades to this rifle, if you're doing it on a budget rifle, would probably be too far if you're paying someone to do it. But if you're doing it yourself, then it's never too far. You can do what you want. It's your rifle. Fit whatever parts you want. Ensure you do your research and look into what's available and what works. You'll find that there's little bits of differences between some brands. They're not necessarily proprietary parts, but they might be off spec slightly, so you have to do a bit of sanding or a bit of filing. It's all trial and error, and it's all about tinkering with the replica until it works. I thought this would just be a fun delve into my very first replica and what it's become and what I've done with it. As you all know by now, I have lots of replicas. I tend to tinker around and work on most of my replicas at some point or another, either to alter them for performance or the way they look. If you are considering going into upgrading your rifle, the main bit of advice I would give: if you're happy with your rifle's performance, if it works well and it sounds good, then do not do anything until it breaks. There's no point, as the old adage goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You can go way wrong. I have with this many times. I've had this break down on me mid-game and had to go to my backup just because I've made a mistake or I've not done a modification or an upgrade quite correctly. I'll be the first to admit it, and then it breaks down on me. So, if you're looking at upgrades, make sure you have a backup rifle. Remember that if you're going to be paying someone to do upgrades to your replicas and you're looking at major upgrades perhaps, then it might be worth having something that has the styling and the outer body that you're after. If you're wanting metal upper and lower receivers, then get something with metal upper and lower receivers before you start spending money on upgrades. If somebody could let me know in the comments, I have had a lot of struggles trying to get a metal and upper lower receiver for this particular replica, because that's the next thing I want to change. I can't find them for sale anywhere, not for a reasonable amount of money anyway. I don't want to spend a huge amount of money. So if anybody does know anywhere in the comments that's selling metal upper lower receivers, then please let me know, and I'd much appreciate it. But as I say, back on topic, if you're looking at upgrades and you're planning on doing your work yourself, then use your first rifle. Use that to do your upgrades. Start with simple upgrades such as the barrel group, hop-up assembly, hot rubber, that type of thing, external modifications. And then as you get more confident, move into the internal modifications. And if you're doing that on your own replica and you're working on it yourself, then you can never really go too far with it. If you're paying someone to do upgrades, then I'd maybe start with a reasonably decent beginner rifle to have those upgrades done to, mainly from the externals. You want it to have the externals and the look that you're after before you start paying someone money to do up the internals, unless of course you've got a particular attachment to a replica, maybe like I do with this. This is the replica that got me started in Airsoft, so I'll never get rid of it, and I'll always be tinkering with it, and I'll always use it in games quite regularly. This probably has had as many outings as many of my more expensive replicas. So I hope that answers a few questions that you may have when you buy a new replica. I see a lot of posts on social media with people saying, what upgrades should I do when they've just bought a brand new rifle? And as I've just said there, if it isn't broken, then don't fix it. Take it out in the field, ascertain whether it needs any upgrades, decide if it's performing as well as you'd like, or you're having fun with it. If you're having fun with the replica, then don't change anything until it breaks, should I say, sorry. When it does break, that's the time you could maybe look at upgrades, because you're going to have the replica apart anyway, or you're going to be sending it to a tech who will have the replica apart. And at that point, you could maybe inquire about upgrades. But if you're happy with what you've got and you've just bought a new replica, try it out first. If the range isn't there, then look into that. But if you're happy with it and you're having fun, then keep running it as is until it breaks, or maybe look at external upgrades, because they won't affect the performance particularly. On the other hand, if you're going to be doing the work yourself and you just want to learn how to do it, make sure you have a backup replica in case your one that you're working on isn't back together in time for a game day, or it breaks down mid-game. And try to learn on a replica that's affordable. As for the CYMA CM.513 as a starter replica, I certainly recommend it. It's only £80. I had lots of fun with mine. I've used it as a test bench for parts, and I've done loads of work to it, and it's helped me learn how to do tech work to my own replicas, while also being used in game many times. So there we go. If you have any questions about upgrades or tech in general, or if you want to know more about this particular CYMA, then let me know in the comments, and as I mentioned earlier, I'll always get back to you. But apart from that, if you are enjoying my videos, then don't forget to subscribe, and if you like this video, pop a like on it, and I will see you in the next one.